Hi, welcome back to Future Fast. And once again, we have a very interesting guest today. And before we get into the conversation, thank you so much for following Future Fast. And those of you who are here for the first time, I urge you to start subscribing to Future Fast so that it becomes easy. You get an update every time we bring, uh, and most times we try to bring interesting guests to talk about and talk with, and also people who bring some very interesting ideas to the conversation. So with that, I'd like to welcome Florian Willet. Florian, welcome to Future Fast. Florian is a human rights activist. He's a legal scientist. He's a legal philosopher. And even in the human rights activism part, he's the co-president, am I right?
I'm the co-president, right?
A co-president.
Yeah.
So co-president for a human rights organization in Switzerland, which works in supporting or advocating assisted death, or if I can put it as right to die.
Yeah, and suicide assistance in particular.
Yeah.
And which is important to distinguish from euthanasia.
Correct. And we'll talk more about it in the course of our conversation. So enjoy the ride. And Florian, thank you for making time to be here with us, and welcome to Future Fast once again.
Yeah, it's a pleasure for me, Nanjunda. Whenever someone from India reaches out, of course, I couldn't be more curious about the conversation. I mean, India is almost a whole continent for itself, almost an own planet. So, I mean, such an heterogeneous society, and the largest and an old democracy. Nanjunda, tell me, how did you find me, and what did compel you to reach out and make contact?
Oh well, Florian, I think it started with me writing to you basically because I found some news report talking about a death pod in Switzerland. Mm-hmm. And the media report mentioned your name, or rather it quoted you having said this, and you as an advisor to them. Mm-hmm. So that is what prompted me. I looked up for you. It was not easy to find because your professional page, you talk very little about this. So I was not sure if it is the same Florian Willet, but I wrote to you, and I don't know if you recall that I actually asked that your profile looks very interesting, but I was trying to reach somebody else by the same one who does this, and you said it's me.
True. Well, of course, you know, when you're searching for somebody interesting, who else could it be than me?
So true, right? So that was it, and I'm really glad that I could actually, being unsure, and still ended up reaching the right person, which is fantastic. So interestingly, what I found about you is that independent of what triggered my curiosity about you, about Florian Willet, independent of that, also what work you're doing was of my interest from a behavioral economist, and
right.
Also, a legal philosopher. You know, in fact, that's the first time I came across that term. So that is another antenna that went up for me, that, okay, I should, because I also studied law. I didn't complete it. I dropped out because I became an entrepreneur. So I just didn't have time to go to school to complete my law. So I just dropped out after 2 years of going to law school.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you mentioned, I think, in the introduction, you did not mention that I'm a behavioral economist, actually.
Right.
And also a legal scientist with a main focus on legal philosophy.
Right.
So the behavioral economics, I mean, it's so fascinating. I mean, as a biologist, economics is a fundamental subject for you, because only in biology you find resources. I mean, if a car runs out of gas, you know, the car will not be thirsty. And if there is no gas left, there is no scarcity. There is only scarcity when there is somebody who needs it, searches around for some commodity. You know, so only a living being can feel scarcity in desperate search for something that's probably necessary to survival. And the whole human body, and of course of any other living animal, functions economically.
Right.
So even the brain itself, the very brain itself, functions completely on the basis of economic mechanisms. So maybe, Nanjunda, I should tell you that right after school, I was very lucky to get an internship in investment banking. Yeah. Yeah, actually, I was so lucky, but it also happened through relationships. With
Is that
my
what
grandfather.
you wanted to do as well?
Pardon?
Is that what you wanted to do as well?
Yeah, I was interested in stock markets, how they work, in currencies, in commodities. So I thought that getting experience close to the markets through the lens of an investment banker could be very useful. So through some relationships of my grandfather, actually, I got this internship, and I was in the investment banking in one of the very most interesting periods in stock market history, because I came in mid-99 when the new economy and the Nasdaq and the new markets, when they exploded. I mean, positively exploded, yeah. And yeah, I stayed in for 6-7 months, I think, until February. March in the was then my last day, I think. And when the whole market collapsed then again, yeah. So, and old investment bankers who've been there for 40 years told me, well, that's been the most interesting last year of their whole life. I've learned a lot. And of course, we had in this bank, we had so many customers, wealthy customers, who came to us every day seeking for investment advice.
Where were you located then?
In Essen, which is a city between Düsseldorf and Dortmund. Yeah, and it was for me as a 19-year-old or 18-year-old, it was possible to sit down at a table with very wealthy people, watching them making their investment decisions, And what was so interesting was that these people, they explained to us, the bankers, they explained, their whole reasoning, why they think this stock is better at the moment than the other one. And there was so much just a pure intuition, that these people applied. I expected him to, to take a spreadsheet and to put all kinds of numbers on the spreadsheet, to take the calculator and all those kind of things. But they were so confident. I mean, those were business people. They were looking back on their life as successful people. So that they believed in themselves. So I understood that how much actually people's decisions, even high-stake decisions, even financial decisions, are very often dependent on emotions and on just intuition, and of course on very individual biased thinking. And also when I saw then my colleagues, these older bankers, they tried, of course, to give advice, or the customer asked, could you what advice would you give? In what stock would you invest next? And the bankers actually, they were the same. They had just some stories that were made up, and they told anecdotes why this or that stock is more interesting than the other one. So I think we are now 25 years later. This has changed a lot. I think there is very much stock market trading, of course, based on algorithm, based on artificial intelligence, and in the financial industry, they have more and more managed to reduce the mistakes that, of course, humans make. So that as an introduction, why I decided to become a behavioral economist and not a financial economist.
Okay.
But then I was needed in our family business after the internship, and very soon I understood, well, much more important than studying business, marketing, accounting, tax law. Much more important is to really study law. I mean, contracts.
Is it okay to talk about what was your family business?
It was real estate management.
Okay.
Yeah. So you get there as a young man. My father had died, his brother had died, and all of a sudden I was left, and the other people around in the family business said, well, actually, we have our own businesses running. We don't want to close it down to be explicitly there for the family business. So what about you? Would you do it? And yeah, I said, okay, I'll try. With your help, I'll try. So I was a young man trying to survive, and you are in this business and you negotiate, with so much older, very experienced businessmen who are seeking their advantage, of course, and there was so much, pretending, so much bluffing when you negotiate with people. They know that you're inexperienced. They permanently try to make you afraid. They actually try to, to spread fear within you. So they tell you, oh, Mr. Willet, I mean, it's interesting what you're saying there, and makes sense somehow, but from a legal perspective, it's actually very different. So I would recommend rather to do this or that. So, and you don't know the law, you have no idea. Either every time you say, well, I have to call my lawyer first, or you try to study law yourself. And I understood surviving in business, at least in a developed country, you need to know the law much more than some business tools. Yeah, at least in the business that I was in. So I studied law, and then, of course, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, but I very soon I figured out,
Did you go back to your family business then?
Yes, I was still, of course, in the family business, but actually, it was not my career choice.
Right.
So I tried to find, of course, explanations, actually excuses how to withdraw from this family business. But studying law, after some time, really, I noticed, well, I'm rather an intellectual than really, a businessman. At least at that time, I was extremely thirsty for knowledge, thirsty for answers to open questions. But I mean, philosophy would have been too deep. It would have been too abstract. I was still torn, between my intellectual side and the practical side. But at least within studying law, I was more and more focused then on legal theory and legal philosophy. So, and then I was almost done. I was done with my bachelor degree, more or less.
I just want to hold you there. You said you really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Really liked it. So what is it that you liked so much there in the legal studies? What was that caught your imagination?
Well, we already spoke about biased thinking with regard to economic or financial decisions. So very soon it was clear to me that there is so much biasing in legal argumentation. Every lawyer has its education, has its upbringing, has its childhood, has its society around him, has its family, has his religion, has his morality. So of course you always recognize the law, although law and morality is not the same, but you recognize the particular morality of a particular territory, how much the morality is reflected in the law that applies right there. So when all German people, I mean Switzerland, sometimes I take Germany still as an example because I still have a German passport. So take all German people, let's say they all move to Pakistan, right? And all people from Pakistan move to Germany. So what will the people do? Very soon the Germans will say, oh, this law here is very strange. We will modify the law. And maybe 20 years later, you will have the original German law applying in Pakistan. And of course, the other way around.
Correct.
Yeah. So people bring their own law with them. Law is nothing really objective. Although a lot of people think, particularly people who have a very strong moral position, or people who are very religious, they think that law is objective, like a natural law, like physics or chemistry, and you just have to discover it. And once you discover it, it's totally clear for you. But actually, if you look at the heterogeneity the global population of humans, and to see what kind of so many different moral concepts, legal concepts exist and have existed. If we look back into and ask anthropologists to show us what has happened. Yeah, so it's very clear that the law depends on the thinking of a particular person. So, and law is the result of negotiation between people who decide we together we accept to apply a particular set of rules. So, and of course I then as a lawyer I saw, okay, these German lawyers, they have their convictions, they have their morality, and they have their pattern in their argumentation. And very often, I intervened and said, well, this is only your position. Look at some tribe in Africa. Look at some people in Brazil. Yeah. Look at some people in India. You can see these people. They apply completely different rules, and they are happy with their rules. You would completely shock them when you would force them to live under your rules. So. And it was in 2002 when I was not yet done with my I was almost done with my bachelor's. So I was reading newspapers. It was in November or December, and I read that a guy with the name Daniel Kahneman, an Israeli, he was awarded the Nobel Prize, the Nobel Memorial Prize in economics, as the first person without any economics training. He was a psychologist.
Right.
So, and that was then fascinating. I looked at his research. There was no research translated into German. I had to read everything in English. And I couldn't stop reading it. It was totally fascinating for me. Given all my stubborn and biased professors that I had in both in law and also in some business and economic subjects that I took. And then I saw Daniel Kahneman, explaining economists how important subjectivity and emotions and personal preferences are when it comes to decision making. So then it was pretty clear to me, actually, this is even more interesting than law or legal philosophy. I will pursue a PhD in economics with a focus on behavioral economics. So, but there was no expertise in Germany around in behavioral economics. So I kept on reading 2, 3, 4 years, everything that I was able to find in English language. And whenever I approached the professor asking him whether he would like to be a supervisor, a PhD supervisor for me, they all said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I have no idea what this is and what it means, and I don't take it very serious." So I think after a couple of years, I really felt like the expert for behavioral economics in Germany. Wherever I went, there was nobody who actually knew what I was talking about. So a couple of years later, indeed, I finished my PhD in economics, but then I went back to the law because the more and more I saw that you can apply these concepts of behavioral economics. You can very many of them you can apply one by one onto legal concepts.
Is that what made you a legal scientist?
I would say then I went back to law and deepened it in law again, but not positive law, so particular rules, but legal theory, and comparison between legal systems and legal philosophy, So, and looking back to that, I can tell you that in behavioral economics, I learned how human emotions, how they work, how they function. And in legal philosophy, I learned how humans think, how they reason, how they justify their behavior, and how they justify their expectations, So, and this is, of course, a very useful combination.
So when you said that after you finished your PhD in economics and you went back to legal studies, what exactly were you? Did you get into academic research?
Yes, I did. I did then another doctoral thesis, but it was a thesis only, without any duties to teach students or so. Because I taught students in economics, It's also an interesting experience, for 2 or 3 years to do this, to really work with the students and to try to teach them something. But up till today, now we are now I'm 47 years of age. I still consider myself clearly as an economist. Economics really is a science about human realities. You cannot survive without any resources. We all are permanently fighting for survival. And to understand those mechanisms and how humans interact, the very best one still is, of course, economics. No doubt about that.
So where does the legal philosopher come from?
Can you specify what you mean?
I mean, in your context, in your journey.
Yeah.
So you also said you're a legal philosopher. So when did that transition happen, and how did that happen?
Yeah, it happened after I turned back I turned back again towards the law after having really reached the far end in economics with a PhD. So I saw that very much law is based, for example, in Germany, particularly in Europe, particularly on the philosophy of Immanuel Kant. Yeah, which is called deontologism or deontology. So people think that you should be your action, your behavior should be judged on your intentions and not on the result that you produce.
Right.
So if you kill 5 people because you work in the kitchen and by some mistake you poison the food, you
so
should not be.
Your intention was not to kill, so it is not.
You should not be treated like a murderer, like a killer. Your intention matters.
Right.
Yeah. And on the other side, you have consequentialists.
Yeah.
This is rather in the Anglo-Saxon sphere, and probably also a lot of the Anglo-Saxon philosophy and ideology, of course, is probably visible in India. You will tell me maybe. And those people believe rather in the consequences.
Right.
They think, well, people should, before they act, people should be very aware what this will lead to, what they will cause, what kind of problems they might cause with it, And if they cause problems for me, I don't want them to tell me, oh, it happened by mistake. I'm so sorry. It was not my intention. Please don't judge me. Of course, I will judge you as a consequentialist.
Right.
So, and indeed, in consequentialism requires much more intelligence, because you look into the future and you try to foresee what's going to happen. You look at different kind of options that you have, and you try to figure out which one you should actually go for and what you should do. I mean, if you are in a deontological environment, I mean, all you need is your morality, your moral, your intuition, And if you are even religious, you can always say, "Oh, I'm sorry, but my religion told me to do so." Then even you try to play the role of an agent, actually, who only worked for some higher spirit or so. Yeah. So and. Whenever you find people discussing with each other, blaming each other, trying to find excuses for their own behavior, getting out of trouble or so, or when there is outrage, people are pointing at someone, and so wherever people are searching around for who is guilty, who is the troublemaker, who is the black sheep, having studied thoroughly all this legal philosophy helps you a lot to understand why people behave like this or like that. There are even, for example, there is a legal realism. Okay. So it's a bit of a mixture. It's closer to consequentialism because let's say some lawmaker they introduce a new law that says, well, Florian, he is allowed to travel, with his own arms to travel to the sun, to fly to the sun. But Nanjunda is not allowed to do that for some reason. For some reason, Nanjunda is discriminated. So then you can complain if you want. You can say, why is Florian allowed to fly to the sun and I'm not? But when you're a legal realist, you can say, well, anyway, nobody can fly to the sun with his own arms. Even with a rocket, you cannot approach the sun. So actually, this is completely worthless. This is just a stupid piece of paper with nonsense written on it. You cannot even call it a legal bill or so. It just makes no sense. So that's what legal realists would say. Or even, in some situations.
Isn't there a conflict here? See, if it is legally established fact, it becomes that it is okay to discriminate, independent of for what?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to get the very next example that came into my mind. Yes, I mean discrimination is another topic. So I once, it was a very superficial book about India that somehow ended up in my hands when I was 15 or so, and I read that there is a class system in India, and therefore there is so much discrimination in India. I didn't dive too deep in it. Maybe at some time when I get to India next time, with more time than last time, when I had only a stopover in Delhi, maybe some Indian people will tell me more, about their society and about their culture with the 1.5 billion people. No, but you can have a legal system where you are convinced that discrimination is right on base of this or that, on the physics, on your descendants tree, on your family or so, of course. We have feudalism, yeah.
I want to actually, the more you talk about it, I think there is it's perhaps good to have a legal philosophy as a study to start looking at each aspects of it. But what I want to know is that, okay, I mean, it sounds more consequential, but what is the consequence of it? Is it what you do as a legal philosopher? Is it something that goes up to policymakers? Do they actually review the policies based on these kind of studies? How does that work in Europe?
Oh, well, the politicians are usually people who became politicians because they had no proper education to do something reasonable,
Oh, that's the typical thought process in India. But I mean, you will sound like Indian.
Yeah.
You say that.
I mean, Indian is a planet for itself, but at least a planet in some kind within reach. So yeah. Yeah, no, but indeed, politicians are not the most intelligent people, because usually the most intelligent people, they don't want to fight.
Actually, I used to think like that, but my thought process has changed significantly in the last 10 years. I have come to realization that it is true that they are not the best educated, majority of them, and it is true that they don't have the best taste for most of the good things in life, right? And it is also true that they don't make the best role models for anybody. But I seriously started convincing myself that they are very, very intelligent. See, if you are not intelligent, it is not possible to masquerade to be somebody else, which they are not, and get so many people to vote for them, rally behind them, and make people believe, even the educated people believe, that what they are saying is in their own interest. I mean, it calls for not intelligence, brilliance. So this is where, I mean, this is my conclusion in the last 10 years, that I think I'd be wrong to think that they are actually not intelligent. I have convinced myself that they are far more brilliant. So sorry.
Okay. Yeah, well, if you talk to anthropologists, they will tell you that probably the explosion of the human population was then again a driver for a selection mechanism on intelligence, because when you're in a social system, the complexity explodes, and not linear on a linear graph, but exponentially. So take, for example, there is this, actually, he's an educated psychologist, but he worked as an anthropologist in Oxford, Robin Dunbar. Very interesting person. And he is famous for Dunbar's number.
Oh, okay.
So he said, well, along the evolutionary adaptive environment that people have lived in for 1.5 millions, and in which the 2/3 of its brain then evolved. During this time, people lived in small tribes of 150 people.
Right.
Yeah. So actually, I prefer the number 180 just because it's easier to calculate with 18 than with 15 very often. Yeah. So imagine you live together with 150 people. You have to open up 149 accounts, right? So mental accounts. To keep in mind, how many favor do I own Nanjunda, and how many favor does he own me? And so when I have to know, when you come over to me and ask me for a favor, actually, am I in your debt, or is it actually you are in my debt? So I permanently observe the whole society, but I have 149 relationships to other people. So, but the next step is then, of course, to understand that those 149 people, they have relationships with each other. So, and then, of course, you end up in a very high number if you add up all those relationships that individuals have in this whole population. Who owns whom, what, and what's the relationship of this one with that one, so on. Yeah, and this, of course, let evolve intelligence in human. No? So and therefore, the human intelligence is so much higher than the intelligence of chimpanzees, because chimpanzees lived in smaller populations. Huh?
Well, Florian, I think this is the basis for the machine learning approach and the human understanding of AI. But I, at a fundamental level, have a different thought process to how human being is measured. Maybe I think we could talk about it in another conversation, but this is exactly the premise for building machine learning algorithms, and our whole AI evolution comes from this thought process, which is very transactional. So this is where I feel that if only that those people were little more exposed to Eastern way of thinking or Indian way of thinking, probably the approach would have been very different.
We open, probably it will not be it won't remain the only topic that we will have opened today.
Sure.
Where we have to make the hard decision whether we will deepen or whether we will go over to the next more interesting topic.
Right.
But what I can tell you is that I had a period between 2016 2018 when a lot of people, when the blockchain, when there was a lot of interest and a lot of attention, all of a sudden focused on blockchain and technology and on crypto. And also on artificial intelligence, people came over to me to discuss exactly those kinds of patterns, So, we spoke about politicians. I mean, another very complicated topics. I mean, politicians, in the end, they try to survive every day. In a democracy, you have to be re-elected, So your focus is not that much on the very long horizon. Very, very many politicians permanently just try to survive the next month. But I would like to speak with you about the right to die, maybe if that's but also
I would like to get to that part, but just before we get into that, I want to understand that who or what are the influences that you have and you have found in the course of your life. I mean, you did mention that economist, the Nobel Prize winning the German name.
Daniel Kahneman.
Hahnemann, yes. And I've read his books, and very
Yeah.
interesting. In fact, that was the introduction for me as well for behavioral economics. But there are quite a few other behavioral economists who have come in. In fact, good, interesting collaborative research. But apart from that, what kind of books do you read, or podcasts do you follow? What are your other interests?
A podcast episode that I just listened to this morning when I was in the gym training my muscles was Modern Wisdom from Chris Williamson. It was the episode with Andrew Huberman.
Oh, okay.
Published maybe 3 or 4 days ago. Do you know these two guys?
I know of them, yes. And I do follow Huberman as well.
Huberman, yes, of course. So, and well, of course, I follow some. Actually, I'm addicted to football, so I follow a lot of football content.
Okay.
When I hear my podcast, and of course there are German-speaking ones that I follow. But
what topics are they other than football? What are the topics?
I mean, it's not necessarily that I follow topics. I would rather say that I follow interesting people.
Okay.
Who know how to, people like you who invite interesting guests into their show, people whom I would not have any opportunity to meet in person, maybe. But the moderator takes my role as a conversation partner and creates an intimate situation.
Right.
And I can witness that. That's beautiful,
Right.
And of course, I listen to Joe Rogan and Lex Friedman and those kind of people.
Okay.
But I mean, those are the very big podcasts, right?
Well, in the current American elections time, if you listen to them, you are branded. So.
Yeah, of course you get influenced, of course.
Right.
That's true.
And also, you belong to. I mean, people basket you. You are this wing. So
am I basket right now because all of them go into particular directions that I mentioned right now?
Well, at least in the American context. So we are not there, so it's okay. But
exactly.
So
actually, Nanjunda, I think we already have spoken more about legal philosophy than about behavioral economics.
Correct. I just wanted to ask one question on the legal philosophy part of it. Is that how do you see? I understand the relevance of it. Why it is necessary, I understand, but how it is made use of, right? How is it made use of by the legal fraternity or the policymakers, or is there an approach towards that as any particular country in Europe, or as Switzerland, or as Germany, or from your experience?
Yeah, well, the politicians, they don't really listen to you.
Right.
So I mean, those are the ones actually on the top of the state who should.
And legal has a separate. I mean, technically, from a democracy standpoint, it is independent of executive office, right? Legal is a separate pillar.
Well, the government is. They are the executive ones.
Correct.
And the parliament, those are those people who create the law, right?
Correct. But
and then you have the courts, the judges. Who then judge, take the law and judge what the government does. So that's the circle you create in the end.
So your arguments, how are the judges perceiving it from a legal philosopher's observations? How do the judiciary looking at it? That's what I mean, I understand the politics part of it, but how is the judiciary and the legal professionals see it? Because most times they don't really have time to think because they're always consumed by their own case and the challenge of winning the argument, or from a judge's point of deliberating, listening to the deliberation and giving a best. But how are they looking at arguments or representations coming from people like you as a legal philosopher? Because the arguments you present are way beyond what is decided as law, right? Because you obviously come from the relevance to the subject. Because it can't be viewed independently, though it is viewed independently, unfortunately. But you always try to force fix and say, listen, come back. It is for the people, so look at it in the people context. So how are they viewing it in your experience?
Well, I'm not a lawyer. I have no bar exam or so. I cannot, defend people in court. I'm only a legal scientist.
Do you have some forum where you interact with the legal
with lawyers, lawyers who are not familiar with any kind of economics or any kind of behavioral science, and I mean particularly also those kind of lawyers who do not necessarily go to court permanently to fight out disputes in front of a judge or a jury, but rather those kind of lawyers who make large business transactions, who are in contract law, and who seek always, a cooperation and compromise with the other side. Those people, they come to me and seek my advice.
Right.
So the judges, law is, at least in Germany, law is considered to be the most difficult topic that you can study. Not because it's particularly difficult, but those people have to know a lot. They just have to put it in their mind somehow and reproduce it. And also, actually, at least in theory, at least as part of the curriculum, judges should always also take some, when they're, as long as they're students, they should take philosophy lessons. But students always, when there is a subject that they have to attend, that they don't really necessarily have to make an exam in, to pass a test in or so, in the end, they only sit there, and do whatever, listening maybe to your podcast or use the internet or whatsoever. Do not listen really to the professor, And so there are so many judges, who tell me, over a beer, oh, you know what? Yeah, I had this. Actually, there were these philosophy lectures I was supposed to go, but I didn't have time. They were not important. There was no exam, And in the end, I had a buddy going there for me, signing the attendance, And so, as a judge, of course, you are loaded with work. You don't have time for philosophy. If you get, to the highest level, if you are a constitutional judge, then hopefully you have more than the positive law that you have learned. Then hopefully you also have philosophical concepts, But probably you reach that level because you were different than the other ones, and because you had such a broad. Because you were so open-minded also towards legal theory and philosophy. So, but most, I mean, 99% of judges, they everyday business of them is to judge about situations where people sue each other. So, which is really not very philosophical. Yeah. And the politicians who create the law, they don't listen to you because all they care about is how to convince my voters. But really, those who listen to me are the lawyers. I mean, for example, if you are an economist and you are you're educated in law, a very typical, almost a stereotypical, prototypical thing that you are perfectly educated for is the burden of proof. Yeah. So everything starts with who has the burden of proof. Usually, the one who the one who sues the other one has the burden of proof to show he owns me something or so. But not always. I mean, there is, for example, the least cost avoider. For whom is it the most easiest to prove his point? Then we ask him first. He will show us his evidence. Then we go to the next one for whom it's much more difficult to prove his point. For example. So you think in costs, you try to create efficiency in the law. Also in contract law, of course, when you give me a contract, or when you give me a bill that should be that is supposed to be passed through the parliament, if you give it to me, and if it was written by lawyers who have no idea about economics, for sure. I will be able to shorten it down by at least 10 or 20% without, reducing the content. Just because my mind is focused on efficiency permanently. Even within a legal context.
Right, and
so that's important for me. I am much more an economist, of course, then I'm a lawyer.
Yeah, so that's where I was coming to. So one is that you use your behavioral economist and your legal background, and you consult law firms, particularly in the contract law and such. And apart from that, see, you have also, by virtue of being a legal philosopher, you study a lot of relevance of law across, and with a filter of behavioral economics. With your filter of behavioral economics and study of law, how do you see a European legal system? How is it? Because one is that like a constitution, legal, everything is supposed to be organic, right? As much as possible, because that's the way we need to keep it relevant.
Yeah.
So how do you see that? Whatever the countries that you're looking at as Europe, and or if it is only EU, from your perspective, can you share something on that?
That's a very interesting. I mean, it's a cultural question. You're interested about Europe. Is Europe an interesting? Is it an important topic in India? Do people talk a lot about Europe?
Well, it depends. I mean, see, today, as much as you said that India is a world by itself, as much as we are a world in isolation, we have a lot of dependencies, right? I mean, we all have too many dependencies. Yeah, at the core, of course, our DNAs are different only by 0.0001%.
Sure. But you know that you're only 2% away from a chimpanzee.
Yes.
And as a man, you are only 2% away from a woman.
And an elephant also by 2.6% or 3%, something like that.
Is it 2.6? I thought it was, okay, just a little bit more. Okay, all right, good.
So the percentages become very scary when it comes down to this kind of comparison in the DNA.
Yeah. Nanjunda, talking about Europe, very interesting. Don't tell me rude if I tell you. Let me just finish what I wanted to say about behavioral economics.
Perfect. Yes, please.
Okay. So taking on the science of Daniel Kahneman, I saw that he explained human decision making, with a biased thinking and with emotions that people have, which was very different than those finance people that I met within the bank, in the banking system. So, but those people, the finance industry, they were the very first ones who adapted the knowledge created by behavioral economics scholars, because finance people are very, very opportunistic. Whatever brings money, whatever is useful, time is money. Let's quickly learn it and apply it. And when it helps us, fine. And they have so many schemes, and whenever there is something new and useful, they try to put it into their scheme to permanently improve their scheme. And meanwhile, of course, so much is run by artificial intelligence in investment banking. So all this, cognitive science that's focused on biased thinking is one big part of the behavioral economics. Another part is social interaction. Because of course, people do not only care about how much money they have in bank. People care about their reputation. If you go outside and you have a roti with curry, how I imagine Indian people during lunchtime, you hear so many people talking with each other. If one tells the other one, "Oh, did you already hear what person XYZ told about you?" The other person will immediately ask, "No, what did they tell about me?" Because people permanently care about their reputation, and indeed, if we would go back to evolutionary terminology now, of course, in ancient time, reputation was a very important capital when no yet any money existed, when it was very different to monopolize the territory or any physical possession. So reputation and also, for example, attention. People are permanently fighting for attention. Only the one who gets listened to, can actually somehow get to what they want. If you're completely disregarded, you will end up probably in misery. So attention, and this, of course, people became aware of this 10 years ago, I would say, when it was clear how much people on the internet globally are permanently competing for attention. Everyone wants to have his likes, everybody wants to have his followers, everybody wants to create an audience and those kind of things. Then another part of behavioral economics is, of course, marketing, which I don't really like, because marketing has always the connotation about manipulating people.
The digital reference to attention seeking needs a new definition of extrovert and introvert, right? Because
can you say that again, please, Nanjunda? Of what?
The digital reference of attention seeker needs to be redefined in the context of a traditional definition of an extrovert and an introvert.
Aha! I told you, sometimes I have problems with Indian accent.
Sorry, I can't correct that.
My accent is not better probably than yours. It's just different, yeah.
So
an introvert and extrovert.
How would you go about that as a behavioral economist? If you were to advise, say, I run a blockchain company, right? We are building some products which are also focused at security of digital assets. So
security of digital assets,
right? So if we are to work with this aspect, this behavior of digital behavior, right? I think there are two things to a person's behavior, right? One is a physical behavior and digital behavior, and they are not same, right? In a physical behavior, I may be an introvert, but in a digital behavior, I could well be an extrovert seeking likes and thumbs ups and whatever. But in the physical world, I may be as good as a ghost, invisible, right? I just quietly go sit in the last seat. I mean, whatever. And likewise, it could be otherwise, right? In the physical world, I may be an extrovert. And in the digital world, no, I don't like to share anything. I don't like this. I mean, I know both kinds of people who are actually physical world, they're extroverts, but digitally, they don't like to share anything, not even put up their face. They don't even like to use WhatsApp. They don't like to put up a DP, right?
A DP, what is it?
Basically a profile picture on WhatsApp.
Okay.
So don't want to put anything. So how would you as a behavioral economist advise a company who has to engage this kind of people where the behaviors are poles apart from physical and digital, but they are the same individuals? If I have to run a physical campaign and also run a digital campaign, I'll have to talk to same people, but what communication? How would you look at this kind of how would you address this? I mean, I've been really curious on this part because we have very straitjacket definitions for extrovert, introvert. But when you talk about digital behavior, they don't reciprocate. I mean, they don't mirror the same behavior.
Well, there is a very interesting quote that I once heard. I don't know whether it stems from a famous person or not, but a very clever student that I once met. He said, well, Facebook knows who or how you would like to be, and Google knows who you are. Have you ever heard this?
Yes.
Yeah, because you tell Google everything.
Right.
But on Facebook, you of course put the profile picture, the very best profile picture that was taken of you within the last couple of years, probably.
Right.
So on Facebook, you try to put the very best and probably just theoretical version of you. You produce the perfect picture.
I put my picture 7 years old where I have black hair and things.
It was 2 days ago that I had to pick up a colleague from Canada here in Zurich from the airport.
Okay.
And I was looking around, in the arrival section, and I couldn't find him because the picture that he sent me before was from 30 years ago.
So there you go. So
he's 70 now, and he showed me a picture from his 40s. Yeah. So yeah. Of course, it would be very embarrassing for each and every one of us if his Google data were exposed to other people who know him,
Mm-hmm.
So there is a public side of you, and there is also, of course, a huge side of you that's completely closed and locked up for public curiosity.
Right.
Yeah. And a game theory which is another, I wouldn't call it part of behavioral economics, but it has a lot of overlapping. In game theory, there are so many beautiful experiments where you can see that people behave completely different depending on whether they are observed, right, or whether their influence that they execute on the game can maybe not be traced back to them. Completely different. Similar on the internet, you have these trolls, who put all kinds of hate speech on the internet if their name and their real personality is not possible to be traced back.
Correct.
If you have disclosed your natural name, people behave completely differently. Yeah. Correct. So for example,
sorry, after your example, I just remembered something else.
Write it down. Take notes, Nanjunda, before we forget it. For example, in the very interesting European country of Norway, wonderful, beautiful, which is not part of the European Union. This country has only 4 million people as population. And since they're not like Switzerland, since they're not part of the European Union, they're quite a little bit for themselves. A little bit not isolated, but for themselves. They can do whatever they want. They don't need to apply European law. And very interesting that over there, the tax declarations of all people are public on the internet.
I didn't. Can you explain that?
Yeah. In Norway, all the tax declarations are public.
What text declaration?
Tax declaration.
Tax declaration. Yes.
Tax declaration.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you see, accent matters.
But
this time it was my German accent. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So imagine, every citizen, has a login and has a password to log into some database where they can look up how much money their neighbor last year has earned and spent. Incredible for many people. So and it was shown that actually this reinforces pro-social behavior in Norway. But when everybody can see how much people actually like to pay taxes to show to the other ones how social they are and how much they care about the society. So I can tell you about the German culture, for example. People meet at a cocktail party, enjoying their glass of champagne, and telling each other anecdotes about how they managed to get some money that they earned, how to pass the tax office, how to not get it taxed, what kind of deals, to bring your tax down to zero, what kind of genius tax concepts they discovered and applied, to break the rules and to get around the rules, you know. And
why do you think so? Why do you think that is there?
Germany is a population with more than 80 million people.
Mm-hmm.
And there you have a very different culture, because in a small community, everybody can observe everybody else. Let's get back to Dunbar's number, 150 people. There's nothing you really can do, nothing serious, nothing relevant, without being observed by the other ones. Yeah. So in a small society, you have much more a pro-social culture, just due to the fact that you cannot easily hide, and that everybody knows you. You know, everybody knows you. Like in a village, everybody knows you. You know, so. So in a big society, you know, in a city like New York City, you can behave like the, you know, I don't want to say a swear word now. maybe an R-hole, you know, you can behave like an R-hole. Right. And you know, nobody cares because, you know, everybody is doing his own business, you know, and you can do so many things just anonymously.
Right.
Therefore, selfish behavior is much more likely to evolve or to develop. Sorry, my chair. In a large population. But you know, this is of course one of many possible explanations.
Well, you know? In India, actually, if you Google from there on YouTube, you will find people running YouTube channels advising how to save taxes in India.
Yeah.
Right. In fact, a friend of mine recently sent me one such video, where a podcast of some sorts, where he is actually advising entrepreneurs that why it is better to move out of India to save on taxes. If you're running a business, you should set up a company, or ideal, you take up a citizenship or a residency outside of India, maybe consider these countries, and you actually can save on taxes. So this friend of mine forwarded it, and in fact, he is expecting me to go through it and tell him, should he consider, you know, relocating so that he can save on taxes. So so one argument of yours is that, you know, the population, bigger it is, more people actively think about. But what I was also curious is that, okay, that perhaps tallies, right, with Germany and India. India is much bigger, so it is, your argument holds good, that because we are larger, we are thinking like that. But another side of it is that, see, Germany is a far more welfare state in comparison to India, right? So relatively, we don't have as much of welfare. I mean, you know, a very popular meme that goes around lately in Bangalore, at least, is that it's good, you want us to follow the rules, blah, 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 but can you ensure that we get proper roads and, you know, without potholes and things like that. So is it driven by, or how much of it is driven by that what I'm not getting for what I'm giving?
Driven by what I'm getting for what I'm not giving.
For what I'm giving as taxes to the country, and what I'm getting as infrastructure.
Yeah.
That doesn't look like they're tallying. And is that why I rather save as much as possible from paying taxes, because I don't see the benefits when I just drive out of my house?
Yeah, I mean, if you cannot build a reputation built on how much taxes you spend, you know.
The government does announce it. They even put out the biggest taxpayer, and some of these actors and businessmen, their names are shown around saying they are the highest taxpayers and all that. But honestly, I don't know. See, so what I wanted to ask you about earlier, I know it's a little bit of a deviation, it's kind of coming to it, is that, see, for those people, perhaps that reputation matters, but for quite some time, I've been thinking that reputation is a cornerstone for morality.
Is what for morality?
A cornerstone or a pillar.
A cornerstone, a pillar, yeah, okay.
For morality. Do you agree with that? I mean, I've been thinking that, okay, so if you don't really care for your reputation, then you don't really bother about morality.
Well, you know, there are, of course, there are rather individualistic cultures, and there are where people behave more selfish usually, or whether people only behave altruistic or seemingly altruistic when they are observed, indeed, like on Facebook. But as soon as they're out of the spotlight, you know, they behave like on Google again. But in collectivist cultures, usually children are educated from very early on that the focus should be on the common good and not on the individual personal good. And there is a reason, of course, why religious leaders or churches, but not only them, all kinds of ideologies, they try to figure out how they can get their ideology into people's minds as soon as possible, as early as possible in life. So they want to get a grip on the education of very young children. That's why we have Christian over here in Europe. We have so many Christian kindergartens. So and whenever somebody wants to influence people, then the political outrage is the loudest. Of course, you can brainwash people, of course, by exposing them to the same mantra, permanently to the same ideology over years and over years and over years. And as soon as the earlier you start, the more difficult it is for people to get rid of it again in life. There are those societies where people really, really care about the common good and behave in a very collectivistic manner, just because they were trained from early on, And then when you come up as a scientist or an academic with a wonderful new concept, or you are a marketing professional who wants to manipulate people into something, you have to try to keep up with that. And that's, of course, probably much more, you will fail much more often. It's very difficult to fight against a behavior that is trained since 10, 20, 30 years. Than in an individualistic society, of course, where people behave opportunistic and maybe even care for only money.
Okay. One other question in this context, again, about Europe. See, Europe is going through a transition even from religious ways, right? I mean, what data I read, I mean, you're an economist, so you could even tell me if my data is wrong. One, that Christianity or the following of religion is coming down by and large across Europe.
Yeah.
So people are not identifying with one religion or Christianity, which was previously was Christianity. Now they're not identifying with. I mean, let's not talk about the immigrant part of it, right? I'm not referring to the immigrant, and immigrants are strongly aligned to whatever the faith they come with. So independent of this immigrant argument, how do you see the economic behavior changing in a community, in a country or a region or in Europe, where 100% of Christian to today, I don't know, it's less than 50% of Christian thinking?
I would say people who are still a member of a church,
but not
35%,
claiming that they don't identify themselves as belonging to any faith or religion.
Yeah.
So, but the laws remain same. Nationality, identities remain same. They may be, like you said, members of the church, but how is it impacting on their economic and legal behavior when they don't identify with the faith or culture? How do you see that? I think post-Second World War is this phenomena, right? That people have gradually becoming less religious and less identifying with church, whether they travel internationally or not, independently, but this behavior is largely growing, right? I mean, so how does that impact on their economic and social behavior? How is it changing?
So first of all, I would say the poorer you are, the more dependent you are on your immediate environment. You need those people around you, and whenever you get when you get ostracized or put out of the society, you are in very, very big trouble, right? But the wealthier you get, the more money you have in your pocket, the easier it is for you if you find out that in your environment actually people more and more bother you. You don't like the local morality, and you're an independent person. You tell, so at some point you tell people, you know what, I don't care about you anymore. I go somewhere else. I choose my place to live by myself because I have the resources to do so. So this means, of course, that the wealthier in Europe, Europe got, the less people had interested, the less people were interested in religious morality. So the more you want to, of course, fulfill your dreams and your visions, and you have the money to do so, the more, of course, religion is and the religious rules are something just very annoying, keeping you from doing what actually you want to do as an individual. So this is one possible explanation why the churches lost so many members over the time, and why so many people stopped believing in any kind of God in Europe. Yeah, but and also religion, of course, has the effect that people behave in a more collectivist way, so heterogeneous, which means that there is a lot of trouble that you can avoid when people believe in the same ideology. The more diversification you have of ideologies and of moral beliefs, the more people get in trouble with each other. And then
do you see that Europe becoming economically weaker by the time, right, in the last 3-4 decades, has anything to do with this aspect of them having, I mean, not justifying the religion, but having homogeneity of thinking, like what you're saying, and the lack of it is what is actually impacting or contributing to their economic weakness? Is that what you are saying?
Yeah, I would absolutely say, of course. Look at me. Actually, I was born and raised right behind the German and Swiss border on the German side, and therefore I still have a German passport, but I chose to live in Switzerland. I'm not a patriot. I'm not a German patriot. I don't care actually very much about Germany. I'm here in Switzerland. I love this country because I just like the habits of the people here. I like the food. I like the accent, and I like the attitude, how people live here in Switzerland. It's a much closer, it's a much smaller country. I just don't really care about Germany very much. And I can afford to do so. This is the point. I can afford to do so.
You're on a public platform. You're speaking in public, and
I know
German friends may not like what you're saying.
No, there are many people in Germany, of course, since Switzerland has different languages, so at least the German part, which is more than 50%, of course, this half of Switzerland, they observe Germany closely because they say, well, they're very conservative, in Switzerland. They say, okay, let's watch the Germans. When the Germans have a crazy new idea, when the politicians come up with something new, let's observe the Germans. If they succeed, we will adopt it and we will copy it. If they fail, we will just laugh about them and care. We will not care about it any further. So in Germany, the other way around. So they see how much trouble they have in their country. How the heterogeneity grows and grows, and they look at Switzerland and are jealous, of course, how perfectly Switzerland functions. So
heterogeneity.
I wanted to talk about patriotism. This is another thing. Not only religion, but also patriotism.
So you think most Germans are no longer feel the sense of patriotism anymore?
Yeah, it's rapidly declining. Okay. So actually, many Germans in Germany, when they listen to what I'm saying, they will pick up maybe my argument to convince other people. You see, everything we do is wrong. The way you want to do it is wrong. I tell you all the time we should do it like in Switzerland. So actually, there is no reason to be worried about how. People will understand what I'm telling you here right now. But I mean, Germany is a very specific example because they lost the war in 1945.
Oh, but I heard there is a right-wing growth in Germany pro neo-Nazi, right?
Yeah.
There is a growth in that following. People are that nationalism is in the rise. Is that not correct?
Well, I mean, it's how do you say that? I mean, the Nazis actually are the perfect example for the most evil that can happen in a society. Yeah, they committed suicide among particularly the Jews and millions of people. So, if you compare this new political party in Germany with the Nazis, this means
I would say what I read is
not
reference
you.
to
I
them
mean,
as
yeah.
neo-Nazi. So
If people do that, if people do that, actually, I would say they very much downplay. They extremely downplay what the Nazis were and what they did. I mean, it's ridiculous to compare these new politicians with their very specific ideas. That's true, but comparing them, to an ideology who openly committed suicide among millions of people. And to try to wipe out the Jewish race completely, this is really ridiculous. It's very sad, actually, because you really the Nazi time is a very singular event in the German history that is a very perfect warning for everything. But you should not misuse it and exploit it to permanently, whenever your political opponent does something that you don't like, to immediately pick up Nazi, the Nazi example, to say, well, this is where we are going to end up. It's that's really ridiculous. That's like shooting, with big bombs on small dirts. That's how I would say.
So you actually don't think there is anything close to that kind of a revival? I mean, what media generally refers to as there is some kind of a revival.
All Japanese people are Asians, but not all Asian people are Japanese, right?
So the same argument.
So okay, I would say there is maybe 1 or 2% of the population in Germany who, for some reason, they glorify the German history, they glorify the Nazi period, and they flirt, with this Nazi ideology. Of course, maybe 1 or 2% of the population. So, as an advocate for their goals and for their ideology, probably it makes sense to vote for this party that we are talking about. It's like the Japanese who are all Asians, but it's not that all Asians are Japanese. So not everybody who is in that party can be considered to be a Nazi.
Yeah, no, it may be a 2%, but is that a growing thinking? Is that a growing?
No, the Nazi ideology is absolutely not growing in Germany.
Okay.
It's actually decreasing. When I remember the early 90s, when I was on the edge of really being an adult, there was much more Nazi ideology for sure in Germany.
Oh, there was?
Yeah, in the 90s there were, the more we have internationalization, the more we have globalization, the more we have the internet, where it is necessary that everybody speaks and understands English, the more open-minded people get, But 30, 40 years ago, you could live in Germany without ever speaking any necessity to speak any English word, And of course, some people, they glorified their patriotism and being German, and being angry all the time that Germany lost the war against.
Even glorified Hitler?
Yeah, I'm talking about 1, 2, 3% of the population, and I'm talking about 40 years ago, maybe, right?
Yeah, no, but I thought there was a massive correction effort, what US did, and also I think there was a sense of apology among an ordinary German, right? From a school, they were taught to think like that.
So I'm talking about a minority smaller than 5%, right? Significantly smaller than 5%. They have always existed.
And now with the immigrants coming in, is that again giving wind to this aspect that, okay, you're feeling like, in UK, there are people talking about that this is not the Britain I wanted. This is not what I grew up in. This is not what I fought for.
Yeah.
Soldiers talking about it.
Yeah, when Germany opened its border I mean, we talk about Germany now as a particular example. Germany opened its border for for expats and for people for foreigners coming into the country, doing the lowest, the cheapest kind of work, um, helping the economy grow. That was in the early 60s, I would say, was one big wave.
Okay.
So make a lot of Indian people, a lot of Pakistani people in the UK. In Germany, there were a lot of Turkish people, a lot of North African people in France. So because they made contracts with these countries, send us your workers, we will give them food here, we will give them shelter, and they will have us to work here. So, but of course, these people were supposed to be guests, and politicians always told people in the 60s and the 70s, oh, these are only guests, they will go back in their countries at some point, don't worry about, Okay. And but they completely disregarded that these people, of course, they get children, they raise children, and the new generation, of course, is then torn between the culture of their parents and the culture of the country they're growing up in, And meanwhile, you have the third or the fourth generation of those people, which means that the German culture, of course, has enormously changed, So in my childhood,
are you saying they're there for generations and they have not been given citizenship?
Well, in Germany, meanwhile, it's pretty easy to get the citizenship.
Oh, is that okay? No, but if they were regarded as guests, then they were not offered a citizenship. They were supposed to go back. They were on a work permit or something like that.
Yeah, there are still very old, very old people, 89 years old, who came to Germany 60 years ago and who still have their original passport.
Why is that?
But, well, they never grew up in Germany. They brought their culture into Germany and lived in Germany, but at home in their family, they still celebrated their own culture. It is a matter of patriotism. It's a matter of pride for them to keep their own nationality. But the next generations, with each new generation in those immigrant families, the children, more and more of them, the share of children who then immediately from birth on had the German passport, of course, it grew permanently, And meanwhile, of course, there is so much multiculturalism in Germany and in Europe. You sometimes really have to search for the original German culture, So I traveled a lot. I think I traveled almost 100 countries. For example, also India, because I was for 24 hours in Delhi, right? I'm an expert for Indian culture now. No, but you see, when I travel to some country, to some poorer country, let's say, where there is not so much, where there are not so much incentives for people to immigrate, who wants to immigrate into some poor African country, So you travel the world, you go to poorer countries, and you really see a very original culture, which is not really touched, by some imperialism, And yeah, in the rich European cultures, and like in the United States, of course, in those immigrant countries, the original cultures they completely get lost after some time. That's true. And some people like it, some people don't like it. It's a matter of they're back to preferences.
So in this context of multicultural and diverse populace, how do you see the behavioral economics, the fundamentals of behavioral economics, as you put it? Do you think that they remain same, or do you feel challenged in that context that okay, this is far more I mean, it needs far more different dynamics to be employed? Do you see anything like that? I'm just curious on that.
Yeah, well, the more you feel a patriotism, a connection to your group, to your country, to your community, to your whatsoever, the more your behavior is altruistic.
Altruistic.
The more altruistic it is, of course. When you have a strong identity, that is when a particular culture is a strong part of your own personal identity, yeah, then investing in this culture means to a large share anyway investing in yourself. You identify with it. But the more you feel like a stranger in an environment, or to be just one random piece among many or so, you don't really care about the society that much anymore. So it's like when you have your own garden, you have behind you, where you have your own house with your own garden behind it. You have a strong incentive to make sure that every Sunday you cut the grass and that your garden is beautiful and nice. Whenever some litter falls on the floor, it's on you to pick up the litter. You don't want to see it, and nobody else will pick it up for you. But a public garden in the city, who should care about this public garden? When some litter falls on the ground, why should I pick it up? Why not the other guys over there? Why don't they pick it up? Why should I mow the grass, in some public garden, when somebody else could do it? Or maybe I will do it. I will come back next week, and other people will have completely destroyed the scenery again, in the meanwhile. So therefore, you can maintain a public garden only via taxes and financing this by the state. But this also works only to some degree, because when you have a lot of immigrants, they don't know how long they will stay. Maybe they will stay only for a couple of years. Maybe not. Maybe they will stay they just don't know, and they don't really fund the public good. They don't really pay a lot of taxes. I mean, when they are refugees, they are the ones who are financed. So, and yeah, they go out to some garden, to some public park. Why should they invest in that garden, and why should they try to maintain that garden? They, in the end, when they go home in the afternoon or in the evening, they will leave back all their litter. Those. I'm not complaining against migrants. I'm just an economist, a behavioral economist, who explains patterns of behavior that you can observe everywhere in the world, pretty much, very often.
So, in that scenario, what will the economy's impact be in some time, right? In the next 5, 10, 15 years, how does this work? I mean, obviously this does not contribute to any sense of productivity, because there's always, why should I, like you said. And 2, you also said that rather the expenses are on them rather than they contributing to, right? As an immigrant, or as a what did you say, asylum seekers, right? I mean, they're seeking asylum, so they are getting paid rather than they contribute to. So given this, the economy is not likely to become any stronger, right? It's only going to be weaker.
Take insurance for an example. When you have an insurance, a car insurance, you've paid your premium, hopefully, and so then you cause an accident. You pick up the phone, you call the insurance, and hopefully they will pay at least the damage of the other party.
Right.
But what if you're not insured? You cause an accident. You call any kind of insurance, and you will tell them, you know what, I just caused an accident. You know what, I want to become member of your insurance. How much do I have to pay? Their insurance will tell you, okay, you're allowed to become member. You are allowed to pay a premium, but we will cover only future accidents and not the accidents that you show up already with. So this is just a mechanical problem that you have with immigration. Of course, people come here and ask for resources without having already paid their own share, their own premium into the system, which means when you allow limitless immigration, the whole system will bleed out. Yeah, it's just an economic reality. It's just an economic reality. You see. So there are, I mean, even within Europe, don't underestimate the differences between the the state and the nations in Europe. But look at Canada, look at Australia. Those people, those countries, they take. I mean, but Canada and Australia, they have very small populations in comparison to the size of their territory. They can take a lot of immigrants when they want, and indeed they do want, but they discriminate. You have to apply when you want to come into Australia to live there as a resident. You have to apply. They look at your qualifications. They make an estimation whether you will be a useful member of the society, or whether they will have to fund you and finance you from the first day. And yeah, and that of course has an impact on their decision. In Europe, the nations in Europe and the European continent has the problem that it is very close to Africa, and of course, having migrants from Africa to Europe is absolutely unavoidable. It's a very natural stream, a constant stream, and you cannot really secure all the borders. You cannot secure the whole European coastline. There are permanently people coming in. That's just a reality. And the European cultures, for whatever reason, I mean, that's a completely different topic. But they have pretty much an open border policy. It's some kind of morality in Europe that says, well, we have no use for these people, or for many of those people. We will have no use. We will have no work for them. But we have to help them. We just have to help them because they in their hometown there is poverty and there is war.
Right.
It's an open border policy.
See, I'm just curious, how does a country or a nation or a community view morality, where the religion is down, as in most people don't identify with any religion, not necessarily only that, but any religion.
Yeah.
And morality was always an aspect of faith, right? I mean, it was one side, morality was standing on reputation, and the other pillar for morality was faith, because that was the scale for morality. So now, when the community is becoming less and less religious, what is the scale for morality there? What is the scale of morality in that context?
That's a argument that at some point, sooner or later, you hear. Nunjanda, I don't know how religious you are. We haven't really deepened that, and it's not our topic for today. But when you speak with religious people, sooner or later they will come up with this. How is it not necessarily for keeping up a high level of morality to stick to maintain the religion? But no, there is indeed a lot of evidence that the societies, that people can have a very strong idealism, and they can be altruists, and they can be very, very pro-social, without necessarily being believers, in some concept of the universe and of the God, and whether you've been created by God or not. So even without any superior spiritualism, pro-sociality can be enormously strong, and can indeed keep a society together, depending on various factors. I have to tell you at this point, Nanjunda, we can make another 3 or 4 episodes of this podcast if we discover so many interesting topics. I do have to say that we went into a direction where I would never have expected us to get to today.
Right. Well,
will we do at least a second episode?
Yes. So let me conclude this part of the conversation. I urge our audience and listeners to look up the links given below this podcast. You can follow him, follow the kind of work he's doing, and you can also reach him, because I can vouch for it that he's responsive, because out of the blue, out of the cold, I wrote to him and he did respond. So you can reach, you can engage, and do share this conversation with all those people in your network who you think will appreciate it. Do share your feedback. Most welcome. And I'm sure he will also respond to it. And come back, because we're going to have a very interesting conversation on right to die. In fact, that was the reason I reached out. But when I read the profile with the legal philosopher and behavioral economist, I thought, okay, it may not be the same person, but this is of my interest. So that's how this conversation happened. But come back for that conversation. And till we get that conversation up, enjoy the ride. Thank you so much. And once again, thank you, Florian. Thank you so much.
See you very soon for the next episode.
Yeah.